Alright, so this is going to be my Blender tutorial, just basic for the Boeing 757. So what you have to do to start is you need to click add up here and then go to image and then add a reference image. So I already have one for the 757, which should be right here. So usually what you have to do is you have to Google the plane you want to do and then blueprints, and then you'll kind of see what the image looks like when I add it, and then you'll want to find an image like that and then save it to downloads so you can load it. So you see here's my reference image, but it's not level, so you have to select it and then go over here to this little sidebar, which I'll expand so it's easier to see. And then on rotation X, you're going to set it to 90 degrees. Rotation Y, you're going to set to 0 degrees. And in rotation Z, you're going to set to 90 degrees. So that now the image is straight. And then you kind of want to center. I'm going to move this. So here's your tools. So here I'm going to move the starter cube because we're going to use it later for Windows. So in order to scale up the image, because if you do it like this, you can see how it stretches out. So what you want to do is in the rotate circle, put your cursor in the center, and then click and then drag, and it'll scale it up in all directions. So I have the image backwards, but actually no, it's just my camera's backwards. So now we're just gonna move the starter cube out of the way, and then what you want to do next is I start off with the nose from this direction, so I line it kind of like this so that I have the whole thing in view, and then I go back to add, and then I add a cylinder, and I actually want to figure out, so it's kind of low poly, so I want to see how I can make it a little better. So if I go into modeling, what I should be able to do is right, that didn't work. I don't know how to do it, so I'm just gonna leave it like this. And what you're gonna do is rotate this by 90, the Y, and then rotate the Z by 90, so that it's facing this way. Since the 757 is perfectly round, I don't need to modify it, like the diameter or whatever. I just go straight to doing the nose. So then what you want to do is make sure that half of it, like exactly half of it, is behind the image, which should be pretty easy to do since you can see where the lines are. And then you're going to line it up like this, and then do the same, click here, and then scale it down, and then kind of move it around until it lines up with the image. I can link the image I used in the description. You can see that's just about matched up there. So now what you're going to do is go into modeling, and if it's solid, when you select these, it only selects the visible half. So the way you want to do it is hold Z, so Z, and then go over here to wireframe, and then click it. And then you're going to select these and move them over to the ends so where it lines up with the nose, and then scale it down and then you can either scale it down like this, where you click in the center, and then for the nose you have to make it as small as possible. You have to be careful because in Blender, see if you go too far it inverts. So that's about you gotta get as small as possible, and then line it up with the move tool, and then you go down here to loop cut, which is by the green icons, the fourth one down, and then you see where that, if you can see with the low resolution, this captures in that yellow line. You just click, and then it makes a new set of vertices, and you just click in the points where you know you're going to need some vertices, and then from here you just scale it up until it matches. And then if you have to, you can move them. So what I do is I add loop cuts for the nose until I can get it to line up. I did this one. Alright, so just gonna get the nose finished. Alright, so you can see how the nose is lined up now. So you just scale it, and then if you have to, move it until it matches up with the lines on your reference image. So really all you need is loop cut, scale, and move. And every now and then I go back to layout just to make sure the line isn't rough and inconsistent. And if it is, you can kind of just pinpoint which line is wrong, and then you just go and fix it until it looks right. So you can see how it kind of looks weird from the top. It doesn't look right, but the next step will be using this part of the image to get the shape right from the top. So you can see how I'm scaling and moving it until the lines match with the image. And that's really all it is to doing it. It's just, if you don't know Blender, it's not easy, but it's pretty easy to figure out after. So there, it's all lined up. Looks like this area is just a little bit lower than it should be. So just gonna raise it up and see now that line is straight. Yep, so there's the nose. So now I'm gonna move over so you can see here how it's starting to look like a 757's nose. So you can see how there's still slight imperfections that this can be fixed though. There's other ways to fix this, but in my case, I just had to move it down a little bit, and now that's better. So from above, the shape is kind of weird, but again, we're going to solve that in a minute. So we're going to select the image in that, and then move it down so that this is aligned here, so that it's in your view. Now the only issue with this reference image is that it doesn't really show the structure of the landing gear. So I'm just going to take that and move it all the way down here. Let's make sure that's lined up. There we go. And I'm just going to create some more loop cuts. That should be enough. I'm just going to do the same thing that we did for the nose, just scale it down until it matches with the reference image. Now, to get the shape from this perspective, you have to do it a little bit different, because you can't scale it by clicking the center, or else it'll mess up the shape of the nose. I'll explain it when we get there. There could be more efficient methods out there, but this is what I know. So and so you see this one is a little bit lower, so we gotta scale it up a little bit. So if it doesn't need to be made narrower, but it just needs to be made taller, you use this blue one here to scale it up and down. So you see it's starting to look better even top down. So it's gonna finish this up. So on the 757, past the big wing cradle, whatever you call it, it's actually lower here for some reason. So it's a little detail I gotta remember to add. Sometimes I find these areas tough when I can't get it properly lined up either way. And so once you get to this point, I don't believe it continues narrowing before this door. So you just start just using this blue one here instead. this point, these two are even, so I'm just gonna scale them up together. There, now it's lined up with the reference image. So if we go back into layout, you can see how, again, just a couple little imperfections there. So you kind of pinpoint where they are. And then see here, this one's not doesn't quite reach. And this one here, same issue. If we go back into layout, you see there's still just a couple little, wireframe can be a little difficult sometimes, but it's the only way you can actually select the vertices properly. I'm just gonna pause real quick. Alright, I'm back. Okay, voiceover is still working. Alright, so again, we're just fixing. Alright, so that's a lot better. So it's gonna leave it that way. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring this up here to where it's kind of like centered. Right now it has to be above like this. Kind of lined up where this currently is, and we're going to move the nose up over here. And then for this, what we want to do to rotate it is use the rotate tool and then use the green one. And then if you look down here, the measurements, Z, you want to set it to the closest exact number, so 176.07 for Y. You change that to 180. -90 can stay. And then this one right here goes to 0. And that's it. So now what you have to do is bring it up until about half the nose is poking out. And line it up. So there, we got that lined up. So now what we're going to do basically is just make sure that these align with the image from this way. So what we're going to do is we're not going to scale it from every axis. We're only going to scale it from this blue one here. And just kind of make it fit with the rest of. I find this part a little bit difficult sometimes because it can be difficult to properly align this. There we go, now it's aligned. So you can see where it doesn't exactly line up with the image. So you're just gonna and sometimes that's all you have to do. Sometimes you need to make some spots a bit narrower. Kind of like that. Just gonna scale that down a little bit so it fits. Alright, so see now that shape is a lot more accurate. And sometimes you can make a mistake where you accidentally do all axes instead of just the blue one, and then it can like scale the whole thing down. But that doesn't always happen. So this is kind of a low poly model, but so basically there aren't that many polygons, so it looks sharp. but to me, at least, it's good. But, you know, you have different standards and might want to figure out a way to have more polygons. Maybe somehow manage to make it have less polygons. So now what we're going to do is just move both of these so that the tail over here is lined up. So now what we can do here for the tail is move it back until about half of the APU is under. About like there. So you see how sometimes it can do this where it doesn't line up with the images, but all we have to do is just extend this a little bit from about this point and then move it to around there, or not. I selected the wrong guy, so I'm going to select it like that to where it goes flat. So from where it goes flat, and then just extend it till that lines up. And now the 757 has this weird little indent here, so you usually want to take these slow and then just double check and make sure that you're resizing in the right direction. And sometimes for these you have to make little extra loop cuts, which you can do. It's not going to mess up the shape if you scale properly. So you see how it's still correct. Just want to check that every once in a while. Now the tail, you usually don't have to do as much work because it's already correct, just with the way it gets scaled. So that's already correct. So now we're going to go back into layout. So we're just going to set this back to 90. And there, we got it. So there's our fuselage. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come back here and we're going to do the windows, specifically the windshield. So we're going to move this and then we're going to bring this down so that these line up. So we're going to go take those two panels, we're going to get the starter cube back, and we're just going to scale it down until it's about the size you need. We're just going to bring it up here to the panel that we're going to use. And then we're going to go into modeling and then use the vertices and just make sure you have both selected and then just line it up with this image. And there we go. So you can see we got that one. And then what we do is we make it long so that it goes through the whole fuselage. So that should be good enough. And then we're going to duplicate it with Shift D. But then you see if we move our cursor, it goes weird. So what we're going to do is so we're going to click Shift D. And then right where our cursor is, we're just going to click. And then move it this way. And then now we're going to go back into modeling with this one selected. Yeah, because you need the object you want to model selected when you go into modeling. I'm actually going to move them both back a little bit. And now we're going to take this and line it up with the next panel. If you have any more questions, you can tell me and I'll make another video. I personally like doing Blender modeling, so I can do a video whenever you need one. You see, sometimes your camera view can make it look lined up when it actually isn't. So you just gotta double check. Make it line up. And what you also want to do is make sure that it lines up with the previous panel so that it doesn't look weird. You can see there it lines up, and then there it lines up. And then we got that second panel done. So now we have these two window panels here. So I'm just going to move these over to the side. But we're going to take one of them, duplicate it, and then just kind of move it over here. Because then we're going to take the front view of whatever plane. You can see there we have the front view. And then we're going to take this guy, this one right here, and then line it up with the front view panel. That's why you want one with all perspectives in every direction. And then we're going to go back into modeling. And then same thing, just line it up. Sometimes once you have it placed on the fuselage, you'll see that some parts don't line up, and you'll just have to modify the model while it's on the plane before you do the boolean. You can see now we have our front panel here. Now, if you notice, there's two. So what you do is you duplicate it in place, and then right click, and then mirror, and then X local. Actually, wait, no, it's mirror. It's mirror Z. No, it's Y. It's mirror Y local. I always forget which one. And then now you can see it's perfectly reversed. So you can do that with the wings and stuff too. So now it's lined up. So all we're going to do is we're going to take these two and then rotate it like this. And then you select each individual one. So you can see, change that to -90. And then change that to -90. And then now we have the front. So now we just need to line these up. Make sure that it's all lined up properly. So just gotta make sure that's like that. So see how here we have to move this up slightly so that it lines up with the other part of the window. And when you get to something like this, after you select the vertices, you can go into solid mode. So see there, now it lines up a lot better. Alright, and then I'm just going to, to delete, you press X, like just X. Right now I'm going to mirror it, Y local. I don't know if global does anything different, that's why I never use it. I just use local. And then there, now it's lined up, so we're going to bring the fuselage over. And actually, wait, no, we need to hollow out the fuselage first. So what we're going to do is take the fuselage, and then we're going to duplicate it in place, and then we're going to shrink it a little bit, the second one that we just duplicated. And then sometimes what you have to do is just make sure that it's not too thin on the other side, and then extend it just a little bit so that it covers as much of the fuselage as possible to make it hollow. And then you're going to take the one on the outside, go to modifiers, add modifier, generate, and then you click the third option, Boolean, and then you leave it as object, and then you click this one here, and then you go to cylinder 0.001, and then if you apply, and then delete the inside cylinder, you see now, instead of just a mesh that looks transparent on the inside, you can see how it actually has hollow walls. Because if I go here into modeling, you can see how it has vertices. It has 2 layers of vertices. Alright, so now we can take it to the windows. You gotta make sure it's aligned. I usually just eyeball this part, and sometimes it's correct, sometimes I have to change it. So about there. And then we're going to select the cubes for the windows, which is cube to cube 003. And then we're going to move to collection. And I'm just going to call it windows. And then we're going to add another boolean to the fuselage. But you're going to click for operands type and click collection. And then select the one that you made. And then apply it. And then now if you delete these, see, now we have a windshield. And this time it's actually lined up. So you can see it's aligned properly and stuff. Now we have a windshield on here. So that's going to be, so this is the guide for the fuselage, for the basic fuselage. And then in the next one that I release, I'll do the windows, doors, and wings.